Hey everyone, before we get started, just a bit of the boring stuff. The information contained on this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your needs and, where appropriate, seek professional advice from a financial advisor. Now on with the episode.
At the time, we wanted some space for pets, the kids down the track, and we decided to buy some land initially. We sat on that for a little while and I sort of went through the process of looking at builders and visiting display homes and all that sort of fun stuff. And it sort of got a bit overwhelming for us.
Hi, I'm Joe. I bought a house, and despite my experience in real estate, I still had a shitty experience. Apparently I'm not alone, so I've gathered the funniest and realest experts to teach Australia a better way to find their home. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. G'day everyone, I hope you've had a great week so far. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host Joe, and today we'll be talking about that tough decision at the very start of your journey. Should you build or buy established? So grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you like and buckle in for another informative episode. Now, I'd like to welcome our guest today. He's actually my old boss, and I like to say good mate, Michael. Michael, welcome to the podcast and thanks for being here. I'm excited to chat to you about your experience because I've heard so much about your latest one over the years that I've known you. So I think you'll give the listeners some great info today.
Thanks, Joe. I'm genuinely excited to be here and have a chat to yourself and hopefully give your listeners some insights into my experience in both building and buying over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And look, that's exactly it. You've done both. So you've bought established a couple of times and you've also built, and you actually had your first baby in the middle of your last one, little Pippa. That must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, look, we did, and you'd probably look at that and you think that's probably not the greatest idea to buy, but look, we wouldn't change that for the world. She certainly keeps us on our toes, and smiles on our faces.
Of course, and I want to look back now, I guess, on your experience, and when you were making that decision to first buy, how did you go about weighing up whether you bought established or decided to build a home, or was it sort of already set in stone for you?
No, not really, Joe. It was an interesting process, I guess, for us to go through. We spent some time to weigh up the pros and cons of both. Should we buy or should we build? At the time, we wanted some space for pets, the kids down the track, and we decided to buy some land initially up in Diamond Creek in Victoria.
Oh, wow.
We sat on that for a little while and I sort of went through the process of looking at builders and visiting display homes and all that sort of fun stuff. And it sort of got a bit overwhelming for us, I guess. And, with that, as well as, I guess a change in circumstances, we then decided to purchase established, and that's sort of how we ended up where we are right now. And as you said, we've got little Pippa with us now.
It is overwhelming. When myself and my partner started going through, the display homes and talking to different builders, it's extremely overwhelming. And the idea, we thought at a few points, should we just buy established because it's so much more straightforward. But we stuck it out and it was stressful, and sometimes it still is, like we're in the middle of it right now. So was that for you guys just it's too overwhelming, let's just go to established?
Yeah, Joe, it certainly was. We spent weekend after weekend looking at display homes and sort of considering all the fun stuff with building, and we had Pippa on the way, and we just decided to go established at that point in time. So yeah, certainly don't regret it by any means.
And if you compare the times that you've purchased established, how was your overall experience? Was there anything that stood out as being good or not so good?
Yeah, it's probably one main one that comes to mind, and it was just the experience of both. The real estate agent, the first instance when we purchased the land, it just sort of felt a bit. I guess it was a bit dry. The connection wasn't there. It felt like a transaction to get some cash, basically, and that wasn't great. And then sort of versus what we went through when we purchased our current home, that was a complete opposite. The real estate agent was quite personable. We got along with him. He was pretty upfront with what the vendor wanted in terms of the dollars, which is always important. But it just felt really seamless, and he was also there to support us through the process, which was important. It's a daunting process, and he certainly helped us along the way. So two very different experiences between both.
It's always hard when you don't have that personal touch, especially like comparing those two experiences. They're chalk and cheese, someone who doesn't communicate, or it feels quite transactional, or just, yep, no problem, here's your land, have a good one. So totally it's interesting to just see the difference. Do you think there was anything that like particularly contributed, like in the sense, was it far apart in the times that you purchased those two, the land and the established home?
Not really. It was probably, when I say that, it was probably 12 months apart from the time that we purchased and settled on the land and sat on the land for a little bit and then purchasing where we are now. So, no, not really. There wasn't, really anything going on around us that, would have contributed to it.
Yeah, that's unreal. Like in that same market, I can't believe it. So you just have such a different experience. So I'm glad you had a good one in the end with the house you ended up in. And in your opinion, what would you say your top 2 or 3 pros and cons would be to buying established, and why?
The time factor is certainly one. You generally get in a little bit quicker to an established home. The sort of typical 30, 60, 90-day type settlements. You potentially, and I say potentially, sort of buying in an area that you really want to be in if, all things line up for you in terms of finances and so forth. And then, thirdly, you are, buying a home that has been lived in, and that necessarily doesn't bring the small teething issues that can come with when you first move in. And then cons, the sort of second part of that is sometimes you don't know what you're buying unless you don't give it the due diligence that it deserves with things like a building and pest inspection, those types of things. Possibly you're up for some maintenance depending on how old the home is and are you prepared to take that on. And then probably last the con with what purchasing established is sometimes you don't always get exactly what you want when it comes to the colours of walls and floor plans and those types of things. So that'd probably be my top 3 for both.
Were there any people or tools that you think helped you come to that decision, like advice you received from people that it might benefit people to hear that, but like if it was like your parents or if you actually had some sort of resource that helped you?
Yeah, it's probably a couple. Friends and family are always a good place to start. And, we certainly reached out to some friends and family that had gone through the process of both initially, just to give us, I guess, some insight into the things that they came across on both sides, whether it was purchasing or, building. So that was a good starting point for us. We got some advice up front to, that you may need to sacrifice some of the things that are your ideals, when it comes to things like location and that sort of stuff. So that's, a couple. And then, I guess it's finding the right people to be in your corner. So, a good broker was always a good starting place, and, one that we were super thankful for as well. And then sort of outside of that, you've got your digital type platforms with, the typical sort of real estate and domain and those types that, helped us sort of understand, I guess, the areas that we were considering and, the types of infrastructure and those bits and pieces in the areas. So friends and family, good broker, and then sort of do your research around where you want to end up living. And as I said, some sacrifices may be needed along the way.
Definitely, and that's something we've spoken to. Us, nearly all of our guests have mentioned, having a good broker is key. They help you so much throughout that process of just giving you a path or what you can afford or how it'll look. So that's awesome to know that you had the similar experience with your broker as well.
I can't stress it enough. We've had some good and bad on that side of the fence as well, and to have a good broker is critical. It sort of takes away some of that financial stress, financial questions that you have looming. So critical.
Definitely. And, you mentioned sacrifices, which actually is a perfect lead into my next question. Did you have to make any sacrifices through the process?
Yeah, we moved in with my wife's parents for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
Some may hear that and think absolutely no way, but we look back on that now, and we're super thankful for that opportunity to fast track some savings and ideally help us along the way and getting us into where we are now. And that's something that we certainly look back on and are thankful for. And I guess it is an important piece to always consider what are those sacrifices that you can make to help you towards your end goal and potentially get you there a little bit quicker. So living with the in-laws for a couple of years was certainly one.
I know myself and my partner did the same, and it was great for savings. It's been awesome. And, it's a bit tough when you lose your space or your area, but it's invaluable with the amount of money just on something like that if you've got the opportunity. If we look at building now, like your experience there, what made you want to build the next house instead of purchasing established, like when you went through that process?
I mean, we're certainly not looking right at this minute, but we would absolutely extend where we are and do some renos. But I think there's excitement that comes with the building process, picking a floor plan that suits and changing that floor plan to make sure it's exactly what you want, and then you've got a pretty long process through that build where you might be visiting every weekend to check out the slab and check out the frame and the bricks are up, and then sort of lock up and getting in. So there's certainly excitement in that build process that I think you enjoy, and I'm sure you, Joe, going through it now, you're probably doing all of the above.
Yeah, definitely. And our experience has been something through COVID that we've just been delayed here and there, but now that it's picked up and the trades are open properly and it's not as slow and we haven't got building materials to wait for, it's been so exciting. So looking at building, and same question, what would be your top 2 to 3 pros or cons in your eyes to building?
I've probably covered off a couple of these already, but that piece around getting exactly what you want up front, the colours and the layout is one. It can sometimes be a little bit cheaper to get in when you build, getting into the market of possibly a house and land type package. It may not be exactly where you want, but you again sort of sacrifice that possibly to get in, and then on the flip side of that, just the time for me, when you consider build period, 6 to 9 months should all go to plan is something. And then just the stress that can come off the back of a build with delays and complications and those types of things. I think it's good when you've got a good site manager to keep you up to speed. But it can be, as I said, a little bit stressful as well, going through that build process.
You've obviously said that the established home process, especially second time round, was a lot simpler and a lot cleaner process.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly was, and I think we may be a little bit lucky with that. I'm sure there's horror stories out there as well, but I would buy again, as you said, a cleaner process. We've ended up where we wanted to live, and within our budget. So I would buy again.
And having a good agent that walked you through the experience too makes a massive difference on how these things go. Into the last question here, what would be your best advice to someone who's trying to make this decision right now, where they're weighing up the pros and cons like you've outlined?
Do your homework around where you want to live. What is that area? What type of infrastructure is important? What are those things that are important to you in either building or buying, and does the area tick some of those boxes? It may not tick them all, but certainly do they tick a couple? Second one would be, as I've mentioned before, can you make some sacrifices to help you along the way and get you to your end goal, your end dream a little bit quicker than what you may not if you hadn't have made those sacrifices. Use the platforms available, as I mentioned, whether that be family, friends, a broker, professionals in the industry to help, I guess, identify anything that you should watch out for whether that be building or buying. And, what are those questions that you might need to have answered if you're talking to a real estate agent or you're talking to a land office? What are those questions to ask to make sure that you're getting all the answers to your questions? Probably a couple there, Joe.
Great advice. And Michael, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and your advice. So it's been really good to have you on the podcast and giving our listeners a lot of food for thought.
No, absolute pleasure, Joe. And as I said, it's hopefully helped some of your listeners along their journeys and talk about my experience one way or another. If there's something that your listeners can take away, that's a win-win.
Thanks, Michael. And thanks to our listeners. I hope this gives you guys something to think about before you enter the market. And for the rest of this podcast, we will be talking to experts and other home buyers that will hopefully help you make an informed decision when buying your first home. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next time on the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Have a good one, guys. Now it's time for our weekly contributor, Purple Pingers, with the latest No BS story.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to tell a story about a time when I was looking for a house. I was looking for, just a one-bedroom place, probably around St Kilda, whatever. Had a couple inspections booked that day, like 3 or 4 in the morning, starting at like 9. And I get to the first one. I'm like 10, 15 minutes early, even though the real estate agent's going to be like 20, 30 minutes late, even though it's the first one. I'm there, and then the time kind of goes on, and I look at the pictures, and I'm like, that house is not for sale. This is not the house in the pictures. So I was like, oh, there is a for sale sign with the same agency. It looks like it's a house around the corner. So I went down a little bit further down into the unit block, and the door was open, and there was like all the carpets were ripped up, and there was like a bunch of tradies doing some work. So I went inside, and I was like, hello. And they were like, what are you doing here? Can you please get out? So I did get out. And then I waited until, it was time for the inspection, waited another 5 minutes, and decided maybe I'll call the real estate agent. Gave him a ring. He didn't answer. And I was like, look, this has been great, but this place probably isn't for me because it's not the place in the photo. Anyways, got in the car, ready for the next inspection. I get the call back, and then the real estate agent calls me, and he's like, sorry, I didn't get your call. What is this about? And I was like, just the inspection that you put up on your website at this time, whatever. I registered at this link, whatever. He's like, sorry, I forgot about that. I'll be there in like 10 minutes. And I was like, look, it doesn't look like it's the same house. And he's like, look, it's going to be a really similar layout. So we just put the same photos up or whatever. And I was like, thank you anyways. That's going to be good. You can, if you could just delete my number, that'd be fantastic. Anyways, to this day, I still get emails from this guy's real estate agency. So that was a really nice experience.
You've been listening to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Did you know we're building a home buyers community to give Australians a better way to find their humble abode? Sign up now and we'll send your first home buyers checklist straight to your inbox by visiting www.abodi.com.au so you can say buying your home was the easiest thing you've ever done. Thanks for listening.